Hello, welcome to ZIM capture number 3. I'm inventor Dan Zen. Please excuse my grovelly voice. I was out at Cherry Beach, a rave at Cherry Beach yesterday. It was amazing, dancing in the sand, all sorts of wonderful people. But we're back here now to zimjs.com, and ZIM is an open source library that helps you code interactive media on the HTML canvas using JavaScript and Create.js. Let's go to the site at zimjs.com, and in our first capture we took a look at the basics column, all of the stuff to get ZIM happening. Then we looked at the Learn column in Capture 2, where we can find tutorials and learn about ZIM and Create.js. And then over here on the left-hand side is a news column, and that's what we're going to look at in Capture 3. So the latest thing will happen up top. Now when we launched this ZIM site for ZIM Try, or Try ZIM as I like to say, we launched with 3 new features. One was called Distill, a second one was called Wonder, and a third one was called Async. So these were the 3 features that we launched with for ZIM Try, and then this is a latest one here. So I'd like to go through those 3 features first. Just a quick scan down the column though that we're going to be talking about. There's also the blog, so I want to talk about the blog. Some other features, dials and indicators, tabs, ZIM Duo launch. ZIM Duo had parameters in 2 ways. We could pass them a null null d, or we could pass them prop colon a comma prop colon or prop2 colon d, and that's put in an object, a single configuration object. There's an archive section in the column, and that had stuff on scroll bars, color pickers, and parallax, and so forth. So things will be moved into the archive section as we go. And then finally at the very bottom, tell us your news in the Facebook fan Create.js group. So go into Facebook, you're welcome to tell us your news as well. And I'll launch our news as well, the ZIM news there. Okay, so let's take a look at the 3 features that we launched with ZIM Try, and that is Distill, Wonder, and Async. Distill. So we'll go into Distill. Distill lets you minify the functions your app is using. So in the past, ZIM was broken down into modules, and I launched each module separately as separate code so that you could pick and choose what you wanted. That still meant that you had to pull all of the module code into your app, and you may not be using all of the things in the build module or the code module, or who knows. This way, with ZIM Distill, let's hit the examples here. With ZIM Distill, you can set ZIM Distill equal to true. That's a constant in ZIM. If you set that up at the top of your code, and then when you're finished running your code, say in a reset button or just some sort of thing at the end of running your code, you can call zim.distill as a method. Or is that a function? Yeah, that's a function on ZIM. What it will return is a series of numbers in your console. So that series of numbers will show up, and that represents all of the functions and classes that your code has been using up to date. You would then take that, and if we go back, you would take that, you would pass it into here. Now, if you're for some reason missing any of the functions, you can also grab more functions from here. Here's every single function listed. But hopefully ZIM will figure that out for you automatically. If not, let us know if something got missed, because some functions rely on other functions. I think I've got most of them, but there may be a few that we missed. So you would paste your numbers into there. Did I copy them? Paste? No, I didn't copy them. And when you do submit, then it would minify your code and end up looking like this. So there's a bunch of minified code, and this code will be smaller than ZIM completely. This is for the Vault 7 feature, and the Vault 7 feature has been distilled down to 15.4K. So all of those various components we were using in Vault 7, instead of a 95K for all of ZIM, we've distilled it down to 15.4K, and then you can use that. All right, that's ZIM Distill. ZIM Wonder is a way to place these commands in your app at any point and find out what your users are doing. So if you're wondering how long it takes a user to operate something, you can do that. So you can count how many times they've done something, how many times they pressed a button, how long it took to do something, to complete a level, etc., and also the order in which things are done. So you sign up with a company and a quick password there, and I'm operating ZIM Wonder on the main site to find out how long they play with the ZIM logo, etc. So it's stats. You can also host the ZIM Wonder code on your own, but you can piggyback on mine on Amazon as long as I don't run into too much trouble with the amount of data that we're loading. Okay, so read more about that at ZIM Wonder. The last one, async. We'll press that. This gives you an example of async. Async is asynchronous data, so much like what's its name? Not JSON-P. I'm using JSON-P, much like Ajax. So asynchronous JavaScript and XML. Except it doesn't have all the runaround, the extra classwork that you have to implement to handle your Ajax. So it uses JSON-P. It's a little bit easier. And we type in Dundas, Ontario, for instance, and hit the forecast. Clouds and scattered clouds. Does a comma make a difference there? I can't remember. This is then going off to a This is going off to a remote site to bring the weather in, and then it brings the weather in all without reloading the page. So you can view the code at that, of that, how it works. And down in here we've got a call somewhere. When we press the button, we're calling ZIM async and saying where we're going. And then we've got an event that happens when that weather loads, and we can get the information that got sent back to us. Okay, so that was Distill, Wonder, and Async as the 3 new features in ZIM Try, amongst a whole host of other updates. Now you can read about those types of updates on our WordPress blog, so if you press that, let's go see the ZIM WordPress blog. This is talking about ZIM Try launching with Distill, Wonder, and Async, so have a read of all those. This last one is called Code Outside the Box, and it's a general article that talks about why we would code for the HTML canvas. Traditional HTML works in these boxes. For instance, the CSS box model. On the canvas, we're free to code outside that box. Talks about the libraries that we can use, such as Create.js and ZIM, and what ZIM gives us, as well as a comparison about the types of interactivity that we would tend to use and what happens between HTML and CSS. For instance, this code right here is how we would rotate something. We would go document.getElementById rect, store that in rect, then we would say rect.style.transform, and we would rotate it. 10 might be a variable that we're putting in there, so that's why it's separated. But that's a pain in the neck to do, whereas in ZIM we go rect.rotation equals 10, or indeed in Create.js as well, rect.rotation equals 10. If we want to add 5 to the X position of something, in HTML we would get the rectangle with document.getElementById rect. We would find out the left style, and that would be rect.style.left, and we would replace pixels with nothing. So that removes the px string, because unfortunately in HTML we're dealing with strings for values. We'd remove the pixels from that, store it in left, and then we would take left, add 5 to it, and add back on the pixels and assign that to rect.left. So that's a real pain in the neck. I don't like coding in HTML and JavaScript because of that. So it's much nicer to code in Create.js and ZIM for things like that. Same with drag and drops. This is one line in a drag and drop. It's like document.body.scrollType or document.documentElement.scrollType. That's one line in 800 lines. So that's an average line, 800 lines of code to drag in HTML. And Quirks Mode called it disastrous. Here's dragging in ZIM, zim.dragCircle. Now, of course, you could maybe drag more easily in something like jQuery. And as a matter of fact, you can think of ZIM as being the jQuery of the canvas, where Create.js gives us all the basics that we need, and ZIM adds a whole bunch of easy functionality on top. including hit tests, so a variety of hit tests, components, which we don't have traditionally. We don't have components on the canvas in HTML. These components, I think anyway, are much nicer than the HTML components, which really need some love. The HTML components, they've been pretty well the same for many, many years, since the mid-90s. We can, of course, style HTML components now, but still, we could use more. When we were in Flash, we had accordion components and tree components, menu components. No. And if you look at mobile apps in Apple, lovely components. ZIM adds some components like tabs and dials and scroll bars and things like that for the canvas. And then a conclusion about building. So that's an example of an article on the ZIM blog. And let's just go back to the ZIM site, ZIM.js site. Here's a dial. Like if we take a look, this is some of those components we were talking about. There's a dial, and I can press on things and activate that dial. These are indicators showing how far the dial has moved. I don't think they're active. You could make them active if you wanted to. Here's another dial. This dial has the gradients on the inside, or the markers on the inside, and goes right around. Does this one go right around too? No, it stops, so you can't go right around. This one can go right around the dial. And there's the indicator going. This one doesn't have any gradients, and it's indeed more, instead of digital, it's more analog. And so we can adjust the scale of down below with that dial. And you can view the code for that. So that was just announcing a new ZIM bit back here on the site. So click and back to the site, ZIM site. Whoop, dials, tabs, the same kind of deal. Now this one was a special ZIM made site. It was not a ZIM bit, although I did make another ZIM bit specifically on tabs. But I had initially done sort of like mini sites showing these features, and now I'm kind of saying, well, I may as well just throw the features into a ZIM bit. So from now on, I usually launch new features in ZIM bits as well, and we can also tab through the whole backing there. And tabs work with the tab button, so if I hit the tab button, that's working there as well. So you get the idea of news, huh? Back in the ZIM Duo, this links through to the blog, and indeed talking about ZIM Duo, what we launched. But the most important part of ZIM Duo is you can pass in parameters like so. Let's just show you this. I'll go in depth more later on this. But there is us passing normal parameters. And if we want to get to this 30, which is a frames per second, there's a whole bunch of stuff in the way that we have to pass nulls into. So the ZIM Duo way, now we can pass in a single object as a parameter, so that's one parameter. But if you pass in an object, then you have to specify the property names that you're accessing. So target is circle, X is 100, Y is 100, whereas if you did it the other way, it was just the positioning that determined that. And then a time of 500 frames per second, 30. So you can avoid all of this stuff in the counting and get right there. Here's making a new rectangle with a rounded corner. We have to put null for a bunch of other things like strokes, whereas if we put in the configuration object, we can get right to the corner. Okay, so that used a function called zob, and you can read about that there as well. In the archives, you can look through this at your leisure. There's scroll bars, color pickers, the ZIM parallax, and so forth. And then there's the Facebook group. Please come on out to the Facebook group, join it. I'll let you join. And there's about 100 people in there now, and you're welcome to talk about anything to do with Create.js or ZIM. And that's indeed where I launch things as well. So that's an overview or a look at the news column for the third ZIM capture. I'm inventor Dan Zen. I hope you stay tuned for more ZIM captures, and we'll show more specific things, probably get in to show the template and the docs and specific examples for dragging, etc., making shapes and so forth. So stick with us. Take it easy. Have a great night. Ciao.